Okay. Welcome in, everybody. Let me see here. I'm going to open up my screen so it's not so small. Oh, there we are. I can see everybody joining now. Awesome. Excellent. Well, welcome in this evening. I'm so glad you guys are able to join. I see everybody is still joining, so I will wait a few moments before we start. We will be talking about today what is trending in the resale market and what is not. So I will just preface this by saying it's impossible to know everything about everything. So we collaborated here at Max Sold to try and pull some of the things that we know have been performing really well. But of course, there's so much more that we could dig into. We could spend days on this topic, right? And of course, out there are experts on all sorts of different things that could probably share all sorts of insights. But we want to give you guys kind of a basic overview so that when you are navigating the contents of a house, an estate, a big downsizing project, if you're working with clients that ask you, does this sell well today? You have some sort of point of reference, and you'll all get a recording of this webinar so that you can share it and also look back on it if it's helpful for you. So if anybody is here that wants CEU credit for attending, put that in the chat because I can share a code word at the end with you guys that you can email back and we can issue a certificate. So if you're in NAPO or NASM and you want CEU eligible, just put it in there. You're getting feedback, Kim. Cesar, are you hearing any feedback on your end?
Nope,
Okay,
everything is good on our end.
all right, awesome. Amy, I'll put a code word out at the very end so that you guys can get the CEU for attending today. And it looks like we've got 25 people and it is 6:03 p.m. So if I don't see anybody else joining in the next moment, I will get started. Oh, people are joining. Okay, let's wait one sec. Okay. Okay, I'll share the CEU with you guys. All right, let's get started. Let's do it. What's hot and what's not? Talking about today's resale trends. If you can't see my screen, let me know, but I think you guys can all see it. So the content, what we're going to talk about today, we will talk a little bit about market trends, the overview of market trends, what makes something trendy. And then I'll talk about what's hot, some high performing items that we found perform well on the auction block, and what's not, some of the underperforming items. Doesn't mean you can't sell them. There is truly a buyer pretty much for everything out there, but we'll kind of flag those so that you understand them. And then I will share some of the unexpected items that tend to sell well, particularly if you're putting sales together and people might toss these things or overlook these things or donate these things, and just some things to keep an eye out for. And then I will talk a bit about how to set expectations with clients, particularly when you're navigating items that are hard to sell and there may be some emotional value attached to them on the client's end, and how to navigate those conversations when that's happening. So market trend overview. Today's resale market's always shifting. That's just how the market works. And there are some key things to understand about trending items in the market. So there are 5 main criterions for making something trendy or perform well or achieve good high realized prices in the market. And the first thing would be nostalgia. So something that people have an emotional connection to from past decades. So for instance, people will ask me about records, vinyl LPs, right? And we have found that the ones that people are most nostalgic about are ones from the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, kind of that 60s, 70s, 80s era. And that makes sense, right? Because we've got baby boomers and the older end of Gen X that remember buying those and they're nostalgic to them. So that's an example of nostalgia. Lots of things prompt nostalgia. Y2K items are a new nostalgia trend right now. So the Gen Z kids, the older end of Gen Z, are in their mid to late 20s now, believe it or not. And they are nostalgic about things from 2005, 2003. That's really old for them. And vintage, it qualifies as vintage on platforms like Etsy and other platforms out there. That qualifies as legit vintage. So if we're looking at 2005, 2006 home decor, clothing, um, vintage, Y2K. So the other thing that makes something hot in the market is rarity. If it's hard to find, right? So there's different things that can make an item rare. It could be that Beatles album that had a weird printing that happened for some of the albums that were released on the cover. I think there's a thing about that. And I think it's the White Album. I don't remember. Anybody who's a big Beatles collector might know. But if you get that one album, then whoo, you've got, a gold mine because a few of them were released with some sort of print error. That's rare. And for collectors, that's fun. And now they have something that no one else has and it's rare. Another perfect example would be the Pyrex craze. People go nuts over certain pieces of Pyrex because when you think about it, Pyrex is like a glass and it was manufactured, 60, 70 years ago or more. Most of it broke over time. So if you find that really cool piece that didn't break, like that refrigerator dish that has the actual lid, didn't break, that's rare. So people are going to pay more for it because it's trending in the market because it's hard to find. And I'm sure there's other examples for other genres of items that are rare to find out there. I don't know if anybody here is a collector, but feel free to put in the chat what you love to collect. And if you found a rare item from what you collect, there's probably Pokemon collectors out there that look for the rare card. All sorts of things out there that we could be collecting. And I would suspect that most of us are collectors of something, whether we even realize it or not. So feel free to share in the chat if you're a collector and what you collect. Would love to know. Maxwell would love to know. Vintage mason jars and crackle glass. Yes, and glass is becoming actually more and more trendy right now. We've seen an increase in collectible glass, colorful glass, Fenton over the past few years because it's getting harder to find, particularly those fairy lamps. If you know what those are, they were collected by not even the boomer generation. It was their parents that started collecting them, the silent generation. And it's hard to find a lot of them in the market, in the wild, so to speak. So yeah, fun. Glass is awesome, and mason jars are so fun. Thank you for sharing that, Susie. Okay, the third thing that makes items trendy and sought after in the market, of course, is brand recognition. So our minds immediately go to like Louis Vuitton, right? Brand recognition. They have built up a brand following. It's almost like these brands have like little cult followings, and their fans, the people that buy them regularly are waiting for the new line to come out, hoping they can find a piece from that limited line that came out years ago. Brand recognition is huge. We see it in the luxury brand world a lot. They're just trusted, high status names, generally fantastic quality items. And then a fourth reason for why we see big trends in the market and items performing very well often has to do with provenance. So provenance is the history of the item, the story behind the item, right? Is that just a pair of Lululemon leggings, or was it a pair of Lululemon leggings that Taylor Swift bought, right? So you're going to have a very different value point on those leggings based on where they came from. So, if there's an online auction that's coming out of a celebrity's home, it could be your everyday KitchenAid mixer, but if Taylor Swift owned it, to use the same example, people are going to be more excited about it. To give you an example of provenance, and this might be a little disturbing, but I live and work remote from South Carolina, and I live very close to where the Murdoch trials happened. If you guys followed that documentary, they're just a couple towns over from me. It was a whole thing, the Murdoch murder and what happened, and it was a trial. And there was a local auction house over the state line in Georgia that took on the estate sale of the items from that home. And they had just your everyday ugly sofa that was probably outdated from 20 plus years ago, that if we'd seen it in any other sale, we'd probably be hard pressed to sell it, right? We're trying to get it out the door for $5 or keep it out of a landfill. And I think someone paid $2,000 for it just because it was in that guy's estate and they thought it was interesting. So provenance is real. It's a real thing, and it comes in all shapes and flavors. And then the last thing, which is kind of an obvious, straightforward thing on what makes something perform really well in the market, what makes it trendy, is intrinsic value. So precious metals, right? Gold, silver, platinum, comes in many forms: jewelry, coins, bullion. But of course, that's always going to hold some level of value in the market. There are people that follow how that value holds on a day-to-day basis. It's easy to follow online. There are websites where you can follow how those returns are doing on just the scrap value alone for those items. So, of course, when that's in the mix, you've got value. And then I guess it's just a matter of knowing where to find that, like looking at a flatware set, knowing if it's sterling silver versus plated. But then let's shift over to what's not trending in the market, the sad stories. Well, there's really two main things that make something struggle in the market, struggle to find new homes and get sold. And the first is oversaturation, the flooding of items. So when there's too much of something in the market, it's just not going to perform very well. So oversaturation, we'll talk about some examples in a bit, but I'm sure you can think of things if there's just so much of it out there and it's hard to find a home for it, right? I mean, one of our most common ones that we all probably see often are pianos, upright pianos. There's an abundance of them and not enough homes that are able to take them in. And then the other thing is just trends. What are trends in the market? What's driving the resale market through different generations, particularly generations that are doing a lot of the buying? So we have that great wealth transfer that's happening, right? So we have these older generations that are downsizing or passing away, and we are relying on the younger generations that are doing a lot of the buying. So what we're seeing is what they are nostalgic about, or the rarities that they're excited about, will be driving some of the trends. So like I was saying, the Gen Z kids that are older now, they're young adults in their mid to late 20s, they are driving that Y2K trend because they're nostalgic about it. So moving on to the next slide, we'll get a bit into what is hot and what's performing well. So here are some high performing items to keep an eye out for, like I was talking before. And we researched some of these from recent sales at Max Sold just to show you how some of these things have performed recently. Fine and vintage jewelry. So just having some costume jewelry with a little bit of sterling silver in the mix achieved, $285. And that's not even a really huge lot of jewelry, but it was old. You see, it looks like it's almost pre-mid-century there with that watch, perhaps. There's a beautiful mid-century brooch. It's probably signed by a collectible designer. There's obviously something in the mix that's marked sterling. So there's your precious metal, your um, gold and silver that'll get more bids for you. So that's a good example. Luxury brands, the Chanel bag, luxury has a great following. Of course, with a lot of these items, you want to make sure that you're putting them through the authentication channel, which, of course, at Max Sold, we can assist you with. But once you do that and you know it's the real deal and you put it on the auction block, you're going to see some good money for it because there's a following for these brand recognition items. Musical instruments. This is kind of a sleeper that sometimes people don't realize will perform really well, particularly string and horn instruments. There are people that are looking for them regularly because they're musicians and they can make just about any instrument work, no matter how old it is, and even if it needs a repair or a part put in. But there's also a big collector market for instruments as well. So that is something that sometimes people don't think of and might toss or donate if they see, oh, it's old. It's an old, flute. It's an old, even if it's in a box that might have mold on the box, flute might be fine and somebody's going to pay a decent amount of money for it. So keep that in mind when you're in homes and you find instruments. Collectibles, of course, comic books and such. And of course, the thing to know about collectibles, it's funny, the word collectibles, to say collectible means that something is collectible, which means it's going to perform well in the market, is what we would think. Well, there is really a collector for just about everything out there. And when you look at items like comic books, baseball cards, Hummels, Yadros, you name it, when it's an item that there were many editions produced of the items within that genre, within that collector realm, what we find is some are really, really valuable and some aren't. And of course, the collectors know. So when we put them up on the auction block, the collectors know what they're looking at. And so with this particular auction lot, it is possible that not all of these are in here in this picture that you see is what brought the bidding up to 2,400. It could have just been 2 books, could have just been 1 book. But the collectors that are shopping know what they're looking at, and they're like, aha, there's my needle in the haystack. That's the one I've been looking for, and that's going to raise the bidding and the realized price. So, so with collectibles like that, like comic books and baseball cards, not everything is fantastic, but a lot of it and some of it is, and the collectors know. So, be careful when you're going through those things. It's good to include everything because there's often something in the mix that is the aha item that people are looking for. Kim, I see your question here. I will talk about furniture in a bit. Absolutely, we're going to get to that. So other high performing items, for nostalgia, tech, I know, and I don't know a lot about tech and video games. And Cesar, who's here on the back end of the webinar, probably knows more than I do about video games, and what's nostalgic and what's more collectible than not. But there definitely are collectors for this now. I mean, video games have been around long enough that we now have vintage and collectible games, consoles, and I'm sure their condition and whether they're working and not working is going to play into what people are willing to pay. But even with like Apple computers, old computers from the 80s, the early 90s, there is something to be said for tech and video games and computers. And I do believe that there is a component to stereo equipment as well. I don't know it as well as some of my other colleagues at Maxsold and other collectors out there, but yes, when you come across old video games and technology pieces, and I guess even perhaps old iPhones, maybe, there's some nostalgia there for people, and they will pay for that because it's fun for them to collect it. Yeah, I see Jennifer, your comment, Persian rugs. I will get to some questions at the end, but I'll keep an eye on them now. If it comes up in the upcoming slides, I'll touch on it. Otherwise, I'll make sure I answer those questions later. Um, to get back to high performing items, there is a whole movement, particularly with the millennials, where they are nostalgic for early mid 90s home decor. And if you find something with a goose on it, it's gonna sell really well. Don't toss it, don't donate it. If you're running a sale, put it in the sale. I mean, this is like a decoy type style goose, but it could be a coffee mug with geese on it from 1992, and people are gonna fight for it. It's super entertaining. There's like a whole goose girl movement happening. But think about other like 90s decor that was like the stuff you saw typically in homes being decorated with like those wooden calendars where you would slide the little number tiles in and you would change it out. And it was, I think it was called like a year-round wooden calendar. Those types of things that you saw in the early 90s in mom's kitchen, people are really nostalgic about them right now. Any 90s home decor item, super trendy. The Persian rugs here, yes. So I understand what you're saying here in the comment, Jennifer, saying resale value, auction value, worth it after the cost. Is it worth it after the cost of cleaning it professionally? Any advice on that? So yeah, rugs are interesting. I personally wouldn't spend time cleaning a rug to put it in an auction. I would say that that is on the person that buys it. If it is a Persian rug, like I doubt that the person who sold this rug had it professionally cleaned before putting it in the sale. People just don't have the time and bandwidth and want to put the cost into doing that task. So I would say most of the time, if not 100% of the time, at least 99% of the time, rugs are not getting cleaned before they're in a sale. Now, if you have a rug that's in a home where there's been pet damage on it, that's a whole nother story. And you can, if you can sell it, that's fantastic. Of course, just disclose the situation because people will have to get it professionally cleaned or it may not be sellable. Persian rugs, for the most part, are, yes, Carolyn, bread boxes. Those are really trendy too. I see your comment. 90s bread boxes, 80s bread boxes. But back to Persian rugs. Yep, Persian rugs are popular. People love that style. It's like a timeless trend. Like it is actually a constant that I have seen over decades and decades that has not changed. There's always been a market demand for it. And I think it probably goes into the quality. And if you know and learn much about Persian rugs, I would say that one key thing is understanding first whether it's hand woven or manufactured. And you can tell that by turning it over and looking at knotting. So even if you don't want to take time to learn that stuff, if you do a sale, take pictures of the back, close up pictures, because the people that are into Persian rugs, they'll know right away when they look at the pictures and they see how it's woven together. And then also understanding the pile of the rug. When I say pile, I mean the rug itself, like the soft pile on top. Is that wool? Is that silk? Is it a blend? So understanding what that is also affects the value of rugs. So just a few little tips with rugs. But at the end of the day, the power of the internet is phenomenal. AI is phenomenal. And if you can get great photos of it and you're putting it in a sale, the people that buy rugs and are excited about rugs and can do their own research if needed, just need good pictures of the fronts and the backs, and then they'll have an idea of what kind of rug they're bidding on. So rugs do great. And mid-century modern furniture and household items is still holding strong, especially if you have like designer names and you turn over that chair and underneath is the designer name of that mid-mod furniture maker. Snap a picture, make sure you note that, because different designers have brand recognition. So while mid-century modern furniture is nostalgic, it also can have some brand recognition. So that streamlined, raised peg leg look of furniture is very popular. And we see it in lots of, homes of baby boomers that are downsizing, or estates where they need to clear out items. Mid-century mod is trending, and mid-century mod household items, mid-century mod kitchenwares. Pyrex is mid-century. Mid-century mod art and decor. Keep an eye out for those things, because those have a strong hold in the market and people do seek them out and look for them. Oh, Maggie's asking, what have you heard about trends of people reverting to analog media like CDs, DVDs, VHS, iPods? You've heard about parents getting rid of landlines again and media that doesn't have internet for their kids. Interesting. I will talk in just a bit about CDs, DVDs, VHS tapes, and stuff like that. So I will cover that. Let's talk a bit about what's not hot in the market. And I have to oh no, this is still hot. I was going to say I have to apologize because these are hot things. We're still on hot items. Sorry, guys. We're still on hot items. So Corningware, kitchenwares. Corningware, if some of you have been in the world of selling items for your clients, you have learned over the past 2 years that Corningware is becoming just as popular as Pyrex. There's this huge demand, and a lot of it is driven by the millennials that are nostalgic to the late 80s, early 90s items. And they remember, holidays where their families were cooking with these items, and it's nostalgic to them. So they love it. Corningware is doing great. Kitchen items, again, from the 80s and 90s, sell well. Garage items. People often will just turn around and say, oh, it's stuff in the garage. We can just donate that. We don't have time to deal with it. Well, be wary that a lot of the value in a home or in an estate might just be sitting out in the garage. Tools are always a great seller. And, while they don't always sell for a ton, sometimes they do quite well. Like in this instance, woodworking tools sold for several hundred. Particularly woodworking tools tend to do well. People collect woodworking tools. Woodworking is a strong hobby and also a career for some people, and they are nostalgic to some woodworking tool items, and they also find it hard. Some items are rare to find, and some are very expensive. So if they're in the resale market, they're going to supplement their inventory and their collection with what they can find resale. So tools do great. Power tools do great. Generators that might be hanging out in a garage somewhere, those also do awesome. There's lots of things in garages and in the world of tools that are going to bring in money for your clients. Books. Books are a tricky one, and they're hot and they're not. So it depends on the books. Stephen King is hot. So there are Stephen King collectors out there all day long for different reasons. Some of it's for nostalgia. Some of it's because some books from certain years are harder to find, so there's rarity. But, other authors like, was it Rowling, who does Harry Potter, also collectible. You find a complete Harry Potter series, super collectible. Same thing with like Lord of the Lord of the Rings series. So complete series, or like brand recognition, so to speak, authors. I mean, Stephen King has a brand recognition. Harry Potter has a brand recognition. So different authors have that, and that drives their value as well. Other books that perform really well, art books, so hardcover art books. So if there's an artist and it features that artist's beautiful work inside, those generally perform well. Antique and vintage books, even if they're not in great shape, like even if they're like old Bibles or religious books or just old fiction or old poetry, they do well. People will buy them because they're rare. People will also buy them for decorative purposes. They love those old rare books, the rarity of them to decorate with. People will stack them and on shelves and then place decorative items on top of them. They do all sorts of stuff with it. And then we were talking earlier a bit about Sweet Valley High books. That's so funny. Yes. So, and that's sentimental, right? Like those are sentimental books. You find a complete series and you'll be excited about it. Nancy Drew, right? Another example. But the glass, yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Carnival glass, colored glass, brand name recognition glass, like Fenton, like those hens on nest that have been so popular lately, where it's like a little animal, like a hen or a turkey, and they're sitting on a little dish and it's glass. And they're Ellie Smith or Fenton, these different makers. Those are really popular right now, and a lot of it is rarity, is because they've broken over the years. And it's funny because I remember it being the late 1990s and seeing something like them somewhere and saying something to my mom. You know, our family's been in this reselling business for years, for decades, for generations, and my mom saying, I think it was the 90s, saying, oh, no, 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 those aren't the collectible ones. Those were probably made in the 60s. See, you can see their reproductions. If you turn them over, you see the seam of the glass, you could tell a machine made it. The really good ones are like, she's saying, like the one I got from my grandmother, who got it from her mother from, you know, 1890, whatever, and they kept their egg money in it. And that one was like, you know, that was handmade. And I'm like, oh, wow. And now today, the ones from the 60s, that was a long time ago. And those are really collectible. Those are antique now. Those are hard to find. Those are becoming rare items. So it's funny how the trends shift and change. So glass, you know, I would say just even 15 years ago wasn't doing that great, and the colored glass now has made this huge comeback. So you're finding that it's selling well for nostalgia and for rarity, both. Okay, let's see what's next. All right, there's the glass hens. So more glass for you guys here. The Fenton, the hens, those are the hens that I was talking about. Those are some examples of how some of those have performed. The fairy lamps are so hard to find, guys. Like if you find a glass fairy lamp, which is basically a bottom where you put your little tea light inside, and then the top, they sell so well. Some of them will sell for, this sold for 55. I've seen them sell for as high as $300, $500, depending on the size, the condition, the maker, the design, the color. But yeah, this stuff has got to come back. And then I was asked before about the tapes, VHS tapes. So CDs, DVDs, cassette tapes, VHS tapes, they are starting to get more trendy. They are starting to see, they're starting to generate some revenue for people. They're starting to see some popularity. And I do believe it's nostalgia. I think that we have generations that are older now, and it reminds them of when they were kids. I mean, I know when my children were little, my kids are of 20 and 18 now, but I remember when they were toddlers going to the thrift store and getting a bunch of Disney VHS tapes and buying a VHS player. Because at that point in time, DVDs were the thing, right? It was like early 2000s. They had like the little portable DVD players. They take them. But I was like, oh, I can get all of these movies from when like I was a kid, and they're on VHS and it's cheaper. And then I can just have a collection of them for the kids to watch. And now they're becoming more popular and nostalgic and selling for more because of nostalgia. And so, and I'm sure rarity is starting to play into it, because how long can a VHS tape hold up? So I'm sure we lose a lot along the way here as we move forward in time. The same thing with DVDs is slowly happening. I think we'll probably see an increase in it over the next 10 years as we move further out and further away from people that used DVDs, and the people that did just like CDs start to see it as a more nostalgic thing. Um, Cassette tapes are already there. Cassette tapes are very nostalgic and can be very rare, and especially if you have like bootleg tapes. Do you guys, I don't know if any of you guys remember the bootleg days where people would go to concerts and sneak in their recording equipment and record the Grateful Dead show or whoever they went to see, the Rolling Stones. Um, if you find somebody's like mixtape or bootlegged recording tape, probably not. Now that I think about it, there could be issues with selling bootleg tapes. I'm going to look into that because I wonder, they were illegal like 40 years ago. I don't know what they are now. We should find out because I bet they slip into like lots from now and then time to time. But like somebody's mixtape, those are trendy and nostalgic. Those sell well. And of course, just like the vinyl LP records, when you look at the ones from like the 60s and 70s and 80s that are really popular, if you can get some cassette tapes going from the 80s and the 90s, those are popular. Those are going to sell well. And it's because they're nostalgic and probably for rarity because there's fewer of them out there and fewer of them available. And like I was saying, I think we're going to see that more and more with CDs and DVDs as we move forward here over the next decade. Yes, I will get to jewelry also. Jennifer, you said you wish you had your I wish I had my mixtapes too. I remember selling all my tapes in a yard sale. Like I remember the day and I'm like, why did I do that? Because my kids would get such a kick out of it, right? If I could give them my old mixtapes from 1992. So underperforming items. What is hard to sell in the market? Yes, furniture. Here we are. We have arrived at the furniture. Dining room sets, Victorian furniture, big bedroom sets, particularly the big dark hardwood furniture, and the bigger, often the more difficult. It's flooded in the market. There's so much out there. It was mass produced. People bought it, in the 80s and the 90s. It was expensive. They financed it. They remember what it took to own those pieces. They also have the incredible emotional attachment to it because they celebrated holidays and birthdays and family events around these dining room sets, and they remember their grandmother having the Victorian furniture. But there is so much of it unloaded into the market right now that has diluted the value. So, I mean, to sell a dining room table for $240 is not bad. That's pretty good. A lot of the time I'm finding when I run a sale that I'm hoping that sideboard or that hutch sells for at least a tiny bit of money just to get it rehomed and get it out the door. The same thing with pianos. $65 is pretty good for an upright piano. And the one thing to understand about pianos is that they were not created with the intention to be these sentimental items that are passed down through generations and cherished and loved as they became for a while. They were mass produced and they basically had expiration dates, which is why people have spent so much time and money over decades of time and years to get them restored, fixed, repaired to keep them going. They were just like a family entertainment piece that went in the common family room of a house. It was before the internet, it was before the iPhone, it was before television. And at that time, they didn't realize the emotional value that these pieces would acquire, which makes sense because like the dining room sets, there's so much nostalgia that's tied to these pieces, but sadly they're not trending. There's an abundance of them in the market, and people just don't quite know what to do with them. And the other thing to keep in mind is that even though your piano might sell for only $50 or $30, or you might have to give it away, right? Whoever has acquired that piano, and I can attest to this because I had a teenager who thought she wanted a piano. It's about $600 just to move it across town, and those companies charge by the step going out of the house and into the other house, not to mention the basic moving fee, and then there's tuning it. So even though to your client, it might look like their piano sold for $50, their piano sold to the buyer for like a ripe $800, right? Because they're putting a lot of money into it that your seller's not seeing because it's not easy to, they're quite heavy. If you've ever tried to lift a piano, they're not easy to move, and you could ruin the piano if you don't have a piano mover. So that's the situation with these pieces. In a bit, I'll talk about, if we have some time left, I think we will in a few slides, how to navigate some of these conversations with your clients. Some of you are probably really good at that and have had a lot of these conversations already. I've had a lot of them, and I'm happy to share some tips on how to navigate. Yes, clear glass. While glass is very popular, the clear glass, pressed glass, just everyday crystal, we're not talking Lalique or Baccarat or even Waterford, just like crystal glass, pressed glass is still very flooded in the market and not selling for that much. It doesn't sell like the colored glass. The milk glass is making a comeback, but the regular everyday glass that we see abundantly in these homes that we're helping to clear out or sell the contents of is still within a surplus and flooded in the market. And it just doesn't. I mean, look how much had to be grouped together here just to get $24. And that's great. It's amazing that that's getting rehomed. Okay, more items that are underperforming. China, a lot of you guys know China sets are tough. Full services are just tough to sell. Again, flooded in the market. I don't know if so this picture, I don't know who the maker is here, but this is an example of a really pretty set. It just didn't sell for very much because there's so much of it out there. It's not hard to get China. You go to any thrift store, any yard sale, look all over any Facebook listing. It's just people are trying to, just like the pianos, trying to find a solution for their china. Again, emotional attachment because they probably used it alongside their dining room table for events and nostalgic, emotional, memories that they apply to these items. That's called emotional value. And they just attach a value to these items that may not be realistic because they're flooded in the market and people just aren't buying them like they used to. The same thing with silver plated items. And it is good to know the difference between silver plate and sterling silver. So if you don't know that, definitely learn that. If you're navigating contents inside of a home, that is an important thing to learn because you're going to need to know the difference. Silver plated items are flooded in the market and do not sell for very much money. Sterling silver items are considered collectible and do quite well. So you can look for marks on sterling, like the word sterling, the number 925, the number 800 is for English sterling silver. And here at Maxsold, we actually have training modules that you can access to learn all about different things like silver and furniture and china. And if any of you don't have access for those trainings yet, you've got to let me know or whomever your contact here is know so we can get you signed up and get you access to it. It's free and it is a phenomenal resource. We've worked hard at putting them together here at Maxsold, so we want you guys to have access to that. We talked about Hummels and collectibles before. There is an overabundance of some of these figurines like Hummels, but the thing is that there's always a potential needle in the haystack. So they had to group a whole bunch together here to get the $100. There was probably one in there that was the winner, and the rest was probably just, they need to rehome them. So there is an overabundance of these small little figurine collectibles in the market. They don't perform like they used to. And so, we see it with a lot of different figurine makers like Yadro's collector plates. That's a big one, flooded in the market. And then to touch on books again, we talked about books that do great. Books that aren't that great are, your everyday fiction, nonfiction, hardcover and paperback books that you just kind of need a solution for. They don't sell for very much. There's an abundance of them out there. It's a shame to put them in landfills. But you have to really kind of bundle a whole bunch together to get a decent price if you're trying to sell them in something like an auction. So here are some unexpected items that actually do quite well that people don't think about. And this is where we will get to the jewelry, Denise, that you brought up, because that is very important. Um, Household supplies, you can keep those out of the landfill, you can keep them out of the dumpsters. You can sell those. So if you are in a scenario where you are going to put a sale together for a client, and they have lots of household supplies they're leaving behind, it could be laundry detergent, it could be rolls of paper towels that weren't used yet, it could be half a container of dish pods. It doesn't matter, bundle them all together, and they'll get rehomed, and you'll make a chunk of change on them. They generally do well. It doesn't matter if they're partially used. It could be a container of Tide detergent pods and half of it's gone. That's fine, just put it in. You can put in your description for your sale. If it's an online auction, you can put in the description, includes partially used supplies, some not, some complete, some partially used, as is. People will buy it, that just right there, $100, that's a good chunk of change, but it saves the person who buys it money. It definitely saves them money. Oh, Jennifer, you will get this recording. So anybody who's here today, and anybody, I see the question, are these slides available? You'll get the recording. So anyone who registered and couldn't attend today, they'll get the recording as well. Jewelry, my favorite topic. I love this topic. I have been a vintage and costume jewelry collector for years and years. And when my kids were really little, I used to, for fun, my mom and I would yard sale, and we had a little reselling business on Etsy where we would resell costume jewelry. And I learned so much, and it's addictive. If you like jewelry, it's addictive. And what I learned very quickly was that there is no scenario where you're going to find a box of junk jewelry and not see some sterling in the mix, or most likely a little gold in the mix too. So what you need to learn is how to cull that jewelry, what to look for. And again, we have some training modules here at Max Sold in place that we can share with you. And if you don't have access to our teachables, let us know, because we want to get you guys access. But yeah, we have a whole thing on it that you can learn from. But jewelry is something. People will often think they should dump it in the trash or take it to the Goodwill or wherever because they think it's nothing. But not only is there usually gold and silver in the mix, and you wouldn't know unless you take out those little earring studs and you look at the post and you see if with a little jeweler's loop, which you can get on Amazon, it's a high-powered magnifying glass. If you see 14K on that post, then you know you've got gold. And if you find enough of that, that adds up in weight, at least for your client, right? And then there's the collectible pieces. So we have throughout the decades, Y2K, 90s, 80s, mid-century mod, Victorian costume makers that are not sterling, are not gold, but they are so collectible and sell for so much money because they are so well crafted. And they also have maybe a brand following. And there's so many makers out there that you could learn about, but really the only thing you need to know is that if you see a piece that looks interesting and you turn it over and it has a name, an engraved name or a hallmark on the back, look at who that is. It's probably somebody that has a collector following. So there's a lot to learn about jewelry. There's usually fun stuff going on with jewelry. And then the last thing that I always remind people is the junk drawer. Don't disregard the junk drawer. If you're going through a full estate and clearing stuff out, or somebody's just going to dump stuff from a kitchen drawer and be like, oh, it's trash, dump it, just check it first, because you never know what's in a junk drawer, right? People throw, it's a junk drawer, right? People throw everything in a junk drawer, anything and everything you can think of. So gift cards that nobody ever used, families often want to know that those exist. You could find that for them. Little vintage trinkets and collectibles and keys that you can, bundle together and some collector will want or a crafter will want. Small resellable items. There's jewelry, you could find any. So cull through the junk drawers for your clients because there's often items in there that they don't even know are in there, and they'll be grateful that you find, or you'll be able to really, add something interesting that could be quite valuable to a sale for them that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So don't overlook the junk drawer. Um, Setting expectations with clients. How are we doing? We have about 10 minutes left. And sorry, sometimes I get long-winded and I talk too much about some of these topics because I could just talk about them for days. I could talk, you guys can book time with me and I'll just talk to you for days about it. But I know that some of the big ones that we are up against are dining room sets, pianos, and china collections because of the emotional attachment people have to those items. And emotional value is real. It's just as real as monetary value, but it is not the same thing, right? Monetary value translates to revenue, and emotional value translates to memories that we want to hold on to and cherish. And there are ways to do that. There are companies out there like Artifact is a great app. If you look into that for your clients, if you don't know about it already, they're able to help families process emotional value by capturing, a little documentation and story of the item, and then that helps the family let the item go. So there are ways to help people process their emotional attachment and come to terms with the fact that emotional value doesn't equal financial value when it comes to revenue and value within the fair market. So the fair market doesn't see your emotional value, and that is the hard thing for us to communicate. I have found that the best way to communicate the preparation of letting go of these items is to help them understand that we can't control what the market puts value around. We can't control what's flooded in the market versus what isn't. We can't control trends, but we can, to some degree, control how items live on, and helping them understand the value of rehoming, and understanding that the value of rehoming sometimes is just as valuable as the price other things might sell for is huge. And when you tap into the value that they set on something that's emotional and share that it can be rehomed into a scenario where it's going to be equally cherished and that emotional value will live on with another family, that can help. That is how I tackle that. With pianos, I explain it the same way. I also explain the cost of moving so they understand the financial investment that's going into attaining a piano. I always tell people, and this is the truth, I've sold several pianos for clients over the years, and I have, honest to goodness, I have never seen a piano sell to somebody that wasn't simply buying it because like some kid wanted to learn to play the piano. Like truly, it is generally always going to a place where people genuinely want to learn and play music. Like there isn't a reseller swooping in to try and make a deal and monetize on your piano when they haul it away. Like that's not happening. It's truly going to people that cherish music and are excited to learn. So I make sure they know that. Those are some of the conversations that I have about those types of items. And again, the dining room set thing is hard. It's just helping them come to terms with how to let go of items and let them live on their life in another home. And also you'll have stories. Like I had a sale once where somebody bought this gigantic Victorian piece that didn't sell for anywhere near what, of course, the owner wanted, because it just isn't something that sells for very much in the market right now. but the woman that bought it was so thrilled, and she sent photos of it set up in her dining room, and that was equally valuable to the money at the end of the day. It was as equally valuable to the money that that client had initially wanted to gain on the item. Seeing the picture of that item in the new home was joy for her. So helping to prepare them for that transition is huge. Okay, so the key takeaways: demand is shifting towards smaller, meaningful, nostalgic items. Brand rarity, story provenance matters. Large, formal, mass-produced items, there is a decline in that. Understanding trends, better pricing, and better sell-through. Okay, so I may work on that slide. I think we have some more. There's a lot of takeaways here that we could go through, but I think we're running out of time. But I want to make sure that gosh, in the 4 minutes we have left, I want to make sure I get some of your questions answered. But there is a QR code here. When you scan this, it will allow you to connect with somebody on our team to set up a meeting. If you would like more one-on-one time to learn about those teachables that we have and the training that we have put in place for you guys, which is completely free, and we want you to take advantage of it. Also for you to be able to try out our app, meet with one of us so we can walk you through it and get you familiar with it. And then of course, just if you have questions about partnering with us in general, we would love to connect with you and answer any questions that you have. And then I'm going to give you a code word, and the code word is going to be collectibles. And I will type that into the chat. So you guys have the code word for those of you that want CEU credits. And thank you, Janelle. I'm happy to answer questions. We've just a few minutes left. Gail, I see you've asked something about art, so I'm not sure. I didn't touch on a lot of art. Art is a very niche area, and there's a lot about art. That could be, like, honestly, that could be its whole entire presentation. In fact, I think we have archived webinars that from the past, and I think we do have at least one or two all about art as well, which you should be able to have access to through our YouTube. If you don't have access to our YouTube, reach out to me or somebody so that we can get you that link. But you are so welcome. Janelle, hardcover art books. Yeah, art books. People will buy art books. People will collect those, so they like them. You mentioned an art capture. Oh, Artifact. Heather Nickerson is a co-owner, and she is a member of the NAPO WC chapter. So Artifact is a business partner of NAPO and NASM. So they are just one of the many tools out there that help your clients navigate separating with an item that they have emotional attachment to. They have like a whole process for it that's very interesting. Oh, thanks, Cesar, for sharing the link for the YouTube. Yeah, that's our library of other webinars that you guys can check out. They're CEU eligible. Most of them have code words built into them. So if you watch any of those and you submit to us, we can issue a certificate of attendance for watching those. Yeah, the web. Kristen, you're asking. Let me see if I can spell it right. Artifact. That's the app. It's not I don't think it's a website. I think it's just an app, if that makes sense. Were there any other questions? I know we've run out of time, and I thank you guys so much for being here this evening. It was awesome. It's a fun topic, one of my favorites. So yeah. Oh, emailing me for CEU? Sure. I will put right here. I think you can respond to the email that you might get from Maxwell when they send you the recording. I'm not sure, but just in case, there is my email, and I can direct it to the correct place. Thanks, Gail. It was good to present to you guys tonight. Have a great rest of your night. Good evening.